kitchen of their modest apartment. Rise and shine, sweetheart. Lisa's voice floated through the thin walls, mingling with the tantalizing aroma of toast and eggs that promised a warm start to the day. Daniel's stomach responded with a quiet growl, eager for the breakfast that awaited him. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As he slowly rubbed the sleep from his eyes, Daniel took in the familiar surroundings of his small bedroom. The walls, though marked by the passage of time and wear, were adorned with posters of his favorite basketball players, heroes whose determined expression seemed to inspire him every day. He quickly donned his well-worn but neatly pressed school uniform, a testament to his mother's relentless effort to keep their clothes looking presentable despite their financial constraints. Coming, Mom, he called out cheerfully, his voice brimming with the optimism that seemed to accompany him wherever he went. In the kitchen he found Lisa already in her waitress uniform, her weary eyes softening into a smile as she greeted her son. She leaned down to plant a loving kiss on his forehead, a simple gesture filled with affection and encouragement. Eat up, baby, you've got a big day ahead, Lisa said, her voice imbued with both warmth and quiet pride. Daniel sat down at their small table, savoring every bite of the humble but satisfying breakfast, his smile widening as he appreciated the effort his mother had put into making the meal. Thanks, Mom, it's delicious, Daniel replied, his grin showing the gap where a recent tooth had fallen out. As they ate together, Lisa reminded him of their cherished family motto, a beacon of their values amidst their challenges. Remember, honey, it's not what we have but who we are that matters. Daniel nodded earnestly, his youthful face reflecting his determination. I know, Mom, I'll make you proud. With breakfast finished and the last bite of toast consumed, Daniel grabbed his well-used backpack and headed out the door. The streets of their neighborhood were already alive with activity. He waved to Mr. Johnson, the elderly gentleman who could always be found seated on his porch, and shared a high five with Jamal, his best friend who lived just next door. As Daniel made his way to school, he took in the familiar sights of his community. The corner store, its awning faded and peeling, stood as a testament to years of service. The small park where kids often gathered to shoot hoops after school was a hub of laughter and energy. Nearby, the community center where his mother occasionally worked extra shifts to help make ends meet stood as a symbol of the collective effort to support one another in their close-knit neighborhood. Despite the worn appearance of some buildings and the challenges they faced, there was a vibrant warmth to the community that Daniel cherished deeply. He carried this sense of belonging and optimism with him, unaware that today's journey would lead to an unexpected and unsettling turn of events. As Daniel walked to school on that crisp autumn morning, the cool air seemed to sharpen his focus. He was preoccupied with the math test looming on his schedule, and his thoughts were absorbed in reviewing multiplication tables. The rhythmic sound of his sneakers crunching over fallen leaves accompanied his murmured recitations. The familiar backdrop of his neighborhood unfolded around him, the steady rumble of passing cars, the hum of voices as people hurried off to work, and the tantalizing scent wafting from the corner bakery promising fresh pastries and warm bread. Without warning, something unusual caught Daniel's eye, a dark object lying partially obscured by a leaf on the sidewalk just ahead. Intrigued, he quickened his pace. As he neared the object, it became clear that it was a sleek black wallet crafted from what appeared to be expensive leather. A rush of curiosity and excitement coursed through him. He glanced around, noting that no one seemed to be in search of a lost item. The streets were busy, but no one appeared to be frantically searching or calling out. With a mix of apprehension and anticipation, Daniel gently picked up the wallet, feeling the smooth texture beneath his fingers. It was heavier than he had expected, suggesting it was filled with something. I should take a look inside, he thought, rationalizing that he might find identification that could lead him to the owner. Carefully, he unzipped the wallet and opened it. His eyes widened in surprise as he saw a stack of crisp $100 bills neatly arranged inside. The sight of so much money in one place was startling. Daniel had never encountered anything like it before, but he quickly reminded himself that the money was not the focus. His priority was finding out who it belonged to. In a clear plastic slot, Daniel spotted a driver's license. The name on the license made his jaw drop in disbelief. Thomas Carr. The name was familiar to him. Mr. Carter was a prominent businessman renowned for his wealth and success in their city. Daniel knew that Mr. Carter resided in the affluent part of town, a considerable distance from his modest neighborhood. The sight of Mr. Carter's wallet in such an unexpected place left Daniel puzzled and uncertain about the next steps. For a fleeting moment, Daniel's mind wandered to the possibilities of what such a sum of money could provide: new shoes for school, a nice dinner for his overworked mom, perhaps even a basketball hoop for the neighborhood kids to enjoy. The allure of these thoughts was strong, but he quickly pushed them aside, remembering his mother's wise words, "It's not what we have but who we are that Matters drawing in a deep breath, Daniel carefully closed the wallet and slipped it into his backpack. The weight of the wallet seemed to add a new layer of responsibility to his bag, making it feel heavier than usual. Glancing at his watch, Daniel realized he was already running late for school, but he was resolute. Returning the wallet was far more important than his punctuality. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, contemplating his next move. The weight of the wallet pressed heavily on his conscience, reminding him of his mother's sacrifices and the lessons she had imparted. He imagined her reaction if he were to bring home all that money, her face lighting up with joy, perhaps even allowing her a brief respite from her demanding work. But Daniel also recalled her teachings about honesty. Honesty is the best policy, she often said, and he could almost hear her voice now guiding him gently. Determined, Daniel made up his mind. The wealth of Mr. R or the potential benefits for his own family did not change the fundamental truth. Doing the right thing was what mattered most. With renewed resolve, Daniel turned on his heel and headed away from the direction of his school. He knew Mr. Carter's company was downtown, approximately a mile away. The walk would be long and tiring, but Daniel was committed to returning the wallet. As he made his way through the streets, he pondered how he would explain himself. Would Mr. Carter be upset that Daniel had opened the wallet? Would he even believe that a kid from his neighborhood was genuinely trying to return it instead of keeping it? Determined and steadfast, Daniel pressed on, each step taking him closer to doing what he knew was right. Daniel's palms grew damp with sweat as he continued walking, each step echoing his anxiety. The streets were alive with the start of the day. Stores were flinging open their doors, people hurried to their jobs, and buses rumbled past with their usual morning clamor. A few pedestrians threw curious glances his way, likely wondering why a boy in worn clothes wasn't in school, but Daniel was undeterred by their scrutiny. Deep down he felt a profound sense of purpose and conviction. He knew beyond any doubt that he was doing the right thing. The thought of his mother and how proud she would be of his honesty bolstered his resolve. As he neared the towering skyscraper where Mr. Carter worked, Daniel's feelings were a jumble of excitement and nerves. The building loomed above him, its sleek glass facade shimmering under the early morning sun, making it appear almost as if it reached into the sky itself. It was a stark contrast to the modest brick buildings of his neighborhood. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Daniel paused at the entrance, taking in the bustling activity around him. Elegantly dressed professionals navigated the area with brisk efficiency, their polished shoes clicking rhythmically on the immaculate sidewalk. Expensive cars pulled up in front, discharging their occupants with an air of importance. In his scuffed sneakers and a second-hand jacket, Daniel felt starkly out of place. Summoning his courage, Daniel took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy glass door. The lobby unfolded before him in a grand display of opulence. The space was enormous, with high-vaulted ceilings and gleaming marble floors that reflected the light in a dazzling array. A massive chandelier hung overhead, its crystal elements catching the light and scattering it like a constellation of stars. Daniel was awestruck. He had never seen anything so magnificent. He approached the reception desk, his footsteps reverberating in the vast lobby. The receptionist, a woman with immaculate hair and a perfectly tailored suit, looked up at him with a raised eyebrow of surprise. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice courteous yet tinged with curiosity. Daniel swallowed nervously, trying to steady his voice. "I'm here to see Mr. Thomas Carter," he said, barely managing to keep his voice steady. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Do you have an appointment?" she inquired. Daniel shook his head, feeling the weight of his nervousness. "No, ma'am, but I found his wallet and I need to return it to him." The receptionist's expression softened a hint of admiration, replacing her initial surprise. "That's very honest of you, young man. Let me see what I can do." She picked up the phone and began making a call. As she spoke, Daniel took the opportunity to look around the lobby. The pristine modern design was a far cry from the aging buildings of his neighborhood. He thought about his mother, imagining how out of place she would feel here, just as he did now. After a few minutes, the receptionist ended her call and turned to Daniel with a reassuring smile. "Mr. Carter will see you take the elevator to the 30th floor. His assistant will meet you there." Daniel nodded, his anxiety returning as he walked towards the elevator. Inside, he watched the floor numbers climb, each passing digit a reminder of just how far he was from his familiar surroundings. The ascent felt like a journey to a different world entirely. When the elevator doors finally slid open on the 30th floor, Daniel stepped out into a corridor of fine luxury. The hallway was lined with plush carpets and adorned with sophisticated artwork. Daniel felt small and out of replace his worn sneakers sinking into the soft carpet. A well-dressed woman approached him with a warm smile. "You must be the young man who found Mr. Carter's wallet," she said kindly. "I'm his assistant, Miss Parker. Please follow me." Daniel nodded, too overwhelmed to respond verbally. He followed Miss Parker down the hallway, passing offices with glass walls and modern furnishings. The soft click of her heels was the only sound in the quiet space. They stopped in front of an imposing wooden door. Miss Parker knocked gently before opening it. "Mr. Carter, the young man who found your wallet is here," she announced. Daniel's heart raced as he stepped into the vast office, a space that dwarfed his entire apartment. The room was impressive, with towering windows stretching from floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline that seemed to go on forever. The office was meticulously decorated, exuding a sense of sophistication and authority. Behind a grand imposing desk sat Mr. Thomas Carter, a man in his early 50s whose dignified appearance spoke volumes about his stature and experience. Mr. Carter, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, rose from his seat as Daniel entered, his gaze fixed intently on him. "So you're the young man who found my wallet," Mr. Carter said, his voice resonating with a deep authoritative tone that filled the room. Daniel felt a mixture of nervousness and awe as he approached, his hands visibly trembling. He reached into his backpack with a slight quiver and extracted the wallet, holding it out with a sense of quiet determination. "Yes, sir," Daniel responded softly, his voice barely audible. "I found it on the sidewalk this morning. I knew I had to return it to you." Mr. Carter took the wallet from Daniel's outstretched hand, his movements deliberate as he carefully inspected it. After a moment he looked up from the wallet, his eyes now filled with curiosity and a hint of intrigue. "Everything appears to be in order," Mr. Carter said, glancing back at Daniel with a contemplative expression. "What's your name, son?" "Daniel Thompson, sir," Daniel answered, his voice tinged with nervousness. Mr. Carter's eyebrows arched slightly in surprise as he repeated the name as if trying to gauge its significance. "Daniel," he said thoughtfully, "tell me, why did you decide to return the wallet? There was a considerable amount of cash inside." Daniel met Mr. Carter's gaze, his eyes reflecting a deep sincerity. "It was the right thing to do, sir. My mother always taught me to be honest, no matter what the circumstances." Mr. Carter's stern demeanor softened as he listened, his expression warming in response to Daniel's earnest words. He walked back to his desk and took a seat, motioning for Daniel to join him in one of the plush leather chairs positioned across from him. "That's quite admirable, Daniel," Mr. Carter said, his tone now infused with genuine appreciation. "Not many people would have done what you did." Daniel sat down, carefully feeling the enormity of the chair make him seem small in comparison. However, Mr. Carter's encouraging words made him sit up a bit straighter. "I genuinely appreciate your integrity," Mr. Carter continued. He opened a drawer and retrieved a checkbook, his actions deliberate and methodical. "I'd like to offer you a reward for your honesty," Mr. Carter said, his voice carrying a hint of formality. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise and he quickly shook his head, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "Oh no, sir, I can't accept that," he said, the words coming out with a sense of resolve. "I didn't return the wallet for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Mr. Carter paused, his pen hovering over the checkbook. He looked at Daniel with a mixture of surprise and newfound respect. "Are you certain this is a substantial amount of money? It could be of significant help to you and your family." Daniel thought briefly about his mother working tirelessly to make ends meet. The thought of accepting the money tempted him momentarily, but then he recalled her words, "Honesty isn't a trade, Daniel, it's who we are." With a deep breath, Daniel met Mr. Carter's gaze with unwavering clarity. "I'm sure, sir, thank you for the offer, but I can't accept money from doing what's right." Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, studying Daniel with a renewed interest. "Well, Daniel Thompson," he said, a genuine smile beginning to form on his lips, "you've certainly given me something to ponder today." He rose from his chair and extended his hand to Daniel. "Thank you for returning my wallet. Your honesty is both refreshing and commendable." Daniel stood as well, shaking Mr. Carter's hand with a firm grip, just as his mother had always advised him to do. "You're welcome, sir," he said, a small but genuine smile spreading across his face. "I'm just glad I could help." Daniel Thompson left Mr. Carter's opulent office with a light heart and buoyant steps. The grandiose building, which had initially seemed so intimidating, now felt less formidable. Stepping out onto the bustling street, he took a deep breath, a sense of pride swelling within him as he recalled the choice he had made. The walk back to school was longer than usual, but Daniel didn't mind. He replayed the conversation with Mr. Carter in his mind, reinforcing his belief that he had done the right thing. His mother's encouraging words echoed in his thoughts, and he smiled, certain she would be proud of his actions. As Daniel neared the school, he glanced at his watch and realized how late he was. A pang of anxiety tightened his stomach. Being late was foreign to him, and he hated the thought of disappointing his teacher. With a deep breath to calm his nerves, Daniel pushed open the heavy school doors and made his way down the familiar hallway to his classroom. He paused briefly outside, steeling himself, before softly knocking on the door. "Come in," Mrs. Johnson's voice called. From within, Daniel entered, feeling the weight of every gaze as his CL classmates turned to look at him. Mrs. Johnson's face showed a mix of surprise and concern. "Daniel, this isn't like you to be late," she said, her brow furrowing. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite his growing nervousness. "I found a wallet on my way to school this morning and I had to return it to the owner." Mrs. Johnson's expression softened and a smile began to form. "You return a wallet," she said, her tone reflected both admiration and relief. "That was very responsible of you, Daniel. Can you tell us more about what happened?" Daniel nodded, feeling a bit more at ease. He stepped to the front of the class and began recounting his morning adventure. As he spoke, he noticed his classmates listening intently, their eyes widening with interest. He described how he had found the wallet, returned it to Mr. Carter, and how the experience had made him feel proud. "And that's why I'm late," Daniel concluded, glancing at Mrs. Johnson with a mix of apology and hope. Mrs. Johnson's face lit up with a proud smile. "Daniel, thank you for sharing that with us. What you did today was incredibly honest and brave. Class, don't you think Daniel set a wonderful example for all of us?" The classroom erupted into applause and Daniel felt his cheeks flush with warmth. He hadn't anticipated such a reaction. As he returned to his seat, his classmates patted him on the back and whispered words of admiration. Though he was grateful for their support, he felt a bit overwhelmed by the attention throughout the day. Daniel's thoughts kept drifting back to the morning's events. The image of Mr. Carter's surprised face in the grand office building kept resurfacing, making it difficult for him to focus on his work. During math class, he struggled to concentrate on the problems before him. He didn't want his good deed to become a distraction from his studies. At lunchtime, his friends crowded around him, eager to hear more about the wallet and Mr. Carter. Daniel answered their questions honestly but kept his responses brief, not wanting to make too much of a fuss. "It was just the right thing to do," he said with a casual shrug, taking a bite of his sandwich. In the afternoon, as Mrs. Johnson introduced a new science concept, Daniel found himself daydreaming again about the tall office building and the busy city streets. He blinked hard, forcing himself to focus on the lesson, knowing that his mother would expect him to pay attention in class regardless of what had transpired earlier. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the final bell rang, Daniel packed up his backpack, feeling a mix of emotions. He was proud of what he had done but felt a bit uneasy about the unexpected attention. All he wanted was for things to return to normal. Walking home, he thought about sharing his day's events with his mother. He knew she would be proud and the thought made him smile. However, as he approached their apartment building, he decided to keep the details simple. He'd tell her what had happened, but would downplay the drama, preferring to savor the quiet satisfaction of doing the right thing. Daniel climbed the stairs to his apartment, the weight of his backpack filled with homework and textbooks pressing down on his shoulders. Each step brought him closer to the familiar comfort of home. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering tension from the morning's events. The routine of greeting his mom and diving into his after-school chores seemed like a comforting distraction from the excitement of the day. Meanwhile, in his plush office, Mr. Thomas Carter was deep in thought. Seated behind his mahogany desk, he replayed the morning's encounter over and over. In his mind, the image of young Daniel with his worn clothes and earnest demeanor holding out the lost wallet was imprinted on his memory. Mr. Carter picked up the leather wallet from his desk, feeling its smooth, luxurious surface inside. Amidst his credit cards and identification was a small fortune in crisp $100 bills. It was clear that Daniel had acted with remarkable integrity. As Mr. Carter reflected on the boy's honesty, an idea began to take shape. He picked up his phone, a smile of determination spreading across his face. He dialed the local police station and explained the situation to Officer Johnson, who listened attentively. "That's quite a remarkable young man," Officer Johnson said, his voice tinged with admiration. "I'd be happy to help you locate his school." After the call, Mr. Carter had the name and address of Daniel's school in hand. He thanked the officer and hung up, a surge of excitement propelling him forward. "Sarah," he called to his assistant, "clear my afternoon schedule. I have an important visit to make." As the afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the schoolyard, a police car and a sleek black sedan pulled up in front of Daniel's school. The sight of these vehicles immediately captured the attention of students peeking through classroom windows, their excited whispers filling the air. Officer Johnson stepped out of his patrol car, followed closely by Mr. Carter, who emerged from his sedan. The unexpected arrival of such distinguished visitors caused a ripple of excitement and curiosity among both Staff and students, the two men made their way into the school and soon arrived at Daniel's classroom inside. Mrs. Davis was in the middle of a math lesson when a knock on the door disrupted the class. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, entered the room with a look that was a blend of seriousness and barely contained excitement. "Excuse me, Mrs. Davis," she said, addressing the teacher, "could you please send Daniel Thompson to my office?" A hush fell over the classroom as every student turned to look at Daniel. His heart began to race, his mind spinning with anxious thoughts. Had he done something wrong? Was he in trouble for being late that morning? The sight of the police car outside had only heightened his worry. Slowly he stood up, his legs feeling unsteady. "Daniel," Mrs. Rodriguez added gently, "bring your things with you, please." As Daniel gathered his backpack, his classmates whispered and stared, their expressions ranging from concern to curiosity. His best friend Jake gave him a reassuring nod, but it did little to quell Daniel's nerves. Walking down the hallway with Mrs. Rodriguez, his imagination ran wild. The presence of the police car only added to his growing unease. Was something wrong with his mom, or was he in trouble for being tardy? When they reached the principal's office, Daniel could see through the glass partition that there were several adults inside, including a police officer. His heart pounded harder, and he felt a lump form in his throat. Mrs. Rodriguez placed a comforting hand on his shoulder before opening the door. "It's okay, Daniel," she said softly, "you're not in any trouble." As Daniel stepped into the office, his eyes widened at the sight before him. Standing next to Officer Johnson was Mr. Carter, the very man whose wallet he had returned that morning. Mr. Carter's face lit up with a warm, genuine smile as he saw Daniel, and for a moment Daniel was overwhelmed with a mix of relief and awe. He had never expected his act of honesty to lead to such a remarkable and unexpected encounter. Daniel's heart pounded furiously as he stepped into the principal's office, his palms slick with sweat and his legs quaking beneath him. The sight of Mr. Carter, Officer Johnson, and Ms. Rodriguez all staring at him with serious expressions sent a wave of anxiety through him, making his stomach churn. "Please have a seat, Daniel," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, her voice softening as she gestured to a chair in front of her desk. Daniel sank into the chair, feeling as if it were swallowing him whole. His mind raced with a whirlwind of thoughts. Had he made a mistake by returning the wallet? Maybe he should have handed it over to a teacher instead, or perhaps Ms. Carter was accusing him of taking something from it before returning it. The uncertainty gnawed at him, fueling his anxiety. As the adults exchanged glances, Daniel's imagination ran wild. He envisioned scenarios where he had unknowingly done something wrong and his mother's face was filled with disappointment. Tears began to form in his eyes and he blinked rapidly, fighting to keep them from spilling over. "Am I in trouble?" he finally managed to ask, his voice trembling and barely audible. Mr. Carter stepped forward, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Oh no, Daniel, not at all," he said quickly, his voice soothing. "I'm sorry if we frightened you. That wasn't our intention." Officer Johnson nodded in agreement, his expression softening. "You're not in any trouble, son. Quite the opposite." Despite their reassurances, Daniel couldn't shake the knot of dread in his stomach. He scanned their faces, searching for any hint of deception or hidden motives. Mrs. Rodriguez moved closer, kneeling beside him with a reassuring smile. "Daniel, honey, take a deep breath," she said softly, her tone calming. "I know this must be a bit overwhelming, but I promise you're not in any trouble. We just want to talk to you about what happened this morning." Daniel drew a shaky breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts in his mind. He couldn't understand why a police officer was present just to discuss the wallet. Was there something he had missed? Had he inadvertently done something wrong? As the adults began to explain, Daniel sat rigidly in his chair, his heart pounding so loudly he struggled to hear their words. All he could focus on was the fear coursing through his body and the desperate hope that whatever was happening wouldn't let his mother down or land him in trouble. The room felt enormous around him and Daniel's small frame seemed swallowed by the large chair. He glanced nervously between Mr. Carter, Officer Johnson, and Mrs. Rodriguez, the tension palpable. Unable to endure the silence any longer, he blurted out, "I didn't steal anything, I swear." His voice cracked and tears began to well in his eyes. "I just wanted to help. I found the wallet and thought it was right to return it. I'm sorry if I did something wrong." Mr. Carter's eyes widened in surprise and he immediately moved to offer comfort, kneeling to Daniel's eye level. No, Daniel, you didn't do anything wrong," he said gently. Officer Johnson stepped forward, his face showing a reassuring softness. "Son, you're not in trouble. We're here because of your good deed, not because you did anything wrong." Mrs. Rodriguez reached out, placing a comforting hand on Daniel's trembling one. "Daniel, honey, take a deep breath. Everything is okay." Mr. Carter wanted to thank you properly for returning his wallet. Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion, his mind struggling to process their words. "But why is there a police officer here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Officer Johnson smiled kindly, his expression warm and encouraging. "I'm here to help. Recognize your honesty, Daniel. What you did was very admirable, and we want to make sure you know that." As the adults continued to explain, Daniel's rigid posture began to relax, Slightly the fear that had gripped him so tightly started to dissipate. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, sniffling softly. "You mean I'm not in trouble?" Daniel asked hesitantly, still struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. Mr. Carter shook his head, his warm smile spreading wider across his face. "Not at all, Daniel. We're here to thank you and celebrate your integrity." His eyes, filled with genuine warmth, remained fixed on Daniel, whose own eyes, still brimming with unshed tears, watched him with a blend of caution and curiosity. Mr. Carter took a deep breath, his demeanor softening as he began to explain. "Daniel," he said gently, "we're gathered here today for a very special reason, and it's all because of you." Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion as he glanced at Officer Johnson and Mrs. Rodriguez, who both nodded encouragingly. Their reassuring gestures did little to dispel his bewilderment. Mr. Carter continued, "You see, when you returned my wallet this morning, I was profoundly moved by your honesty. It's not every day that someone finds a wallet full of money and chooses to return it without expecting anything in return." Daniel's shoulders relaxed a bit, but his confusion remained evident. "But sir," he said softly, "isn't that what anyone would do?" Mr. Carter chuckled warmly, shaking his head with a sense of disbelief. "You'd be surprised, Daniel. Your actions demonstrate a level of integrity that's rare in today's world. Not everyone would have done what you did, and that is something worth celebrating." Officer Johnson, who had been observing the exchange with a knowing smile, stepped forward. "That's right, son. Mr. Carter asked for our help to locate your school because we wanted to make sure we found the right Daniel Thompson. We weren't here to get you into trouble. We wanted to make sure we had the right person to honor." Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been quiet observing, added with a reassuring smile, "Mr. Carter wanted to thank you properly, Daniel. He felt it was important to recognize your good deeds in front of your classmates and teachers. Your honesty and integrity are qualities that deserve public acknowledgement." Daniel's eyes widened in surprise, his voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" he asked, his disbelief evident. Mr. Carter nodded emphatically, his eyes twinkling with warmth and sincerity. "Daniel, what you did deserves recognition. Your honesty and character are commendable, and we believe it's important to celebrate and encourage these values." As the weight of Mr. Carter's words began to sink in, a small smile began to form on Daniel's face. The anxiety that had gripped him earlier began to dissolve, replaced by a warm feeling of pride and relief. "So," Mr. Carter said, clapping his hands together with a decisive gesture, "if you're comfortable with it, we'd like to organize a special assembly with your classmates and teachers. We want everyone to know about your wonderful act of kindness and honesty." Daniel's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness as he stood in front of the packed school assembly. The gymnasium buzzed with anticipation, students whispering among themselves and craning their necks to see what was unfolding. The air was thick with excitement and curiosity. Mr. Carter stood beside Daniel, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder, providing a reassuring presence. "Students and teachers," Mr. Carter began, his voice resonating through the microphone and commanding attention, "we are gathered here today to celebrate an extraordinary act of honesty and integrity." He recounted the story of how Daniel had found and returned his wallet, taking care to emphasize the significance of the boy's actions. As Mr. Carter spoke, Daniel felt his cheeks flush with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. He glanced over at his mother, who sat in the front row with tears of joy sparkling in her eyes. The sight of her emotional reaction filled him with a profound sense of accomplishment. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Daniel's actions touched me deeply, Mr. Carter continued, his voice tinged with emotion. "In a world where it's all too easy to look the other way or think only of oneself, Daniel chose to do the right thing. That kind of integrity is rare and deserving of recognition." The gymnasium fell into a reverent silence, all eyes focused on Mr. Carter and Daniel. The anticipation was palpable, and Daniel could feel the weight of the moment present pressing on him. "That's why, Mr. Carter announced, his voice filled with genuine emotion, "I want to do something special. I want to ensure that Daniel's future is as bright as his character. I am going to sponsor Daniel's education through college." A collective gasp of astonishment echoed through the gymnasium, followed by an eruption of thunderous applause. Daniel stood there, overwhelmed and stunned, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what he was hearing. The applause and cheers seemed to blend into a background hum as he tried to process the incredible gesture. But Mr. Carter wasn't finished yet, and that's not all, he said, raising his hand to quiet the crowd, his expression solemn yet enthusiastic. "In honor of Daniel's integrity, I am establishing the Daniel Thompson Scholarship Fund. This fund will provide opportunities for other young people who demonstrate the same kind of honesty and character that Daniel has shown. It's our way of ensuring that his values inspire future generations." The gymnasium erupted in applause once more, the sound swelling with admiration and excitement. The room was filled with a palpable sense of community and support. Daniel looked around, his heart swelling with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and accomplishment as the applause continued. and the crowd's cheers echoed in his ears. Daniel felt a deep and abiding pride in what he had achieved, not just for himself but for all those who might benefit from the scholarship. The gymnasium erupted into a sea of cheers, a tidal wave of exuberant applause and shouting that filled the entire space. Daniel's classmates, caught up in the infectious energy, leapt to their feet, their cheers mingling with the rhythmic clapping. The once ordinary gymnasium was now alive with the celebration of Daniel's remarkable act. His mother, her face awash with tears of pure joy, hurried forward through the crowd. She enveloped Daniel in a tight, almost desperate embrace, her tears dampening his shoulder as she clung to him. As the exuberant noise gradually faded, Mr. Carter, standing at the front of the gym, turned to face Daniel with a look of profound admiration. He spoke with a voice full of genuine pride. Your small act of kindness, Daniel, has set off a ripple effect that extends far beyond what you might have imagined. You've not only transformed your own life but potentially touched the lives of many others. Always remember, the power of doing the right thing should never be underestimated. The buzz of excitement in the gymnasium became almost tangible as the gravity of Mr. Carter's words began to settle over the crowd. Principal Johnson, who had been standing off to the side, moved forward with an expression of awe and respect clearing his throat. His voice quivered with emotion as he addressed the assembly. I think it's safe to say that this is an extraordinary moment for our school, he began, his eyes never leaving Daniel, today you've made us all incredibly proud. The teachers seated in a row near the front exchanged looks of amazement and pride. Mrs. Rodriguez, Daniel's home room teacher, dabbed at a tear that had slipped down her cheek. She had always seen something special in Daniel, but the magnitude of his actions far exceeded even her highest expectations. The students, initially stunned by the magnitude of the moment, soon broke into unrestrained joy. The cheers and applause swelled and surged through the gym. Daniel's classmates were on their feet, their voices rising in a chorus of jubilation. Even the older students, who typically maintained a facade of cool detachment, couldn't resist getting swept up in the excitement. Daniel. The chant began in the back and quickly rippled through the entire gymnasium. Amidst the cacophony, Daniel stood, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. The sudden focus on him was both exhilarating and overwhelming. His gaze swept across the sea of smiling faces, from his teachers to his fellow students, each expression reflecting pride and admiration. Mr. Thompson, the stern history teacher known for his non-nonsense demeanor, surprised everyone by rising from his seat and initiating a slow, deliberate clap. This, students, he announced, his voice carrying over the den, is what true character looks like. The atmosphere in the gym had undergone a complete transformation. What had begun as a tense and anxious moment for Daniel had evolved into a grand celebration of his integrity. The air was now thick with a palpable sense of pride and collective joy as the cheering continued. Principal Johnson raised his hands, attempting to bring some order to the lively chaos. All right, everyone, let's settle down, he called out, though his smile remained fixed, betraying his pleasure at the scene. I think it's safe to say that this is a day none of us will forget. As the excitement began to subside, Prince Johnson's phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. Stepping aside to take the call, he listened intently, his eyebrows rising in surprise. It seems word travels fast, he said, returning to the group with a look of mild astonishment. The local news station has heard about Daniel's act of kindness and wants to do a story on it. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never imagined that his simple act of returning a lost wallet would generate such widespread attention. Mr. Carter placed a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder, his voice warm and encouraging. You deserve this recognition, Daniel, he said kindly. Your honesty is truly something to be celebrated. Within the hour, the once quiet atmosphere of the school was transformed into a whirlwind of activity. A news van pulled up outside and reporters with cameras and microphones began to make their way into the building. The principal's office was quickly converted into an impromptu interview room where Daniel and Mr. Carter took their seats side by side. Sarah Chen, a well-known local news anchor, approached with a warm and encouraging smile, ready to share Daniel's inspiring story with a wider audience. So Daniel, the reporter began with a warm smile, can you tell us what went through your mind when you found Mr. Carter's wallet? Daniel gulped nervously, his hands slick with sweat as he faced the camera's unforgiving lens. I just knew I had to return it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the right thing to do. As Daniel recounted the events of the day, a sense of confidence began to replace his initial nervousness. His story unfolded with more ease, and with each word his conviction grew stronger. Mr. Carter, seated nearby, chimed in with a look of genuine amazement. I've never met a young person with such integrity, he said, his voice full of admiration. The reporter, clearly moved, listened intently, her eyes reflecting the admiration she felt for Daniel's actions. Outside the office, a crowd of students gathered, their faces pressed against the windows, eager to catch a glimpse of their suddenly famous classmate. Teachers, trying to maintain order, gently shed the students away but couldn't conceal their pride and excitement. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a collective sense of pride For Daniel's act of kindness. As the interviews concluded, Sarah turned to the camera with a radiant smile. In a world that often seems filled with negativity, young Daniel Thompson reminds us that honesty and integrity still exist, she said. This is Sarah Chan reporting from Lincoln Middle School, where a small act of kindness has made a big impact. When the news van finally pulled away from Lincoln Middle School, Daniel's mind raced with the events of the day. He could hardly wait to share every detail with his mother. As the final bell rang, he sprinted home, his backpack bouncing with each step. Bursting through the front door of their modest apartment, Daniel was out of breath and his eyes sparkled with excitement. Mom, he called out, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. His mother emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. Daniel, what's wrong, baby, she asked, her face a mask of concern. Without missing a beat, Daniel launched into the story, his words tumbling out in a rapid stream. He recounted the moment he found Mr. Carter's wallet, the surprise visit from the news crew, and the scholarship he had been awarded. As he spoke, Lisa's expression transformed from worry to disbelief and finally to overwhelming pride. Tears glistened in her eyes as she listened, her heart swelling with emotion. When Daniel finished his story, Lisa pulled him into a tight embrace. Oh, Daniel, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I'm so proud of you, so proud. Daniel buried his face in his mother's shoulder, feeling enveloped by her love and support. I just did what you always taught me to do, Mom, he murmured. Lisa held her son at arm's length, her gaze locked with his. You did the right thing, baby, you're growing into such a wonderful young man. Just then a knock on the door broke the moment Lisa opened it to find Mrs. Cruz there, neighbor standing there with a beaming smile. I just saw the news, Mrs. Cruz said, her eyes wide with excitement. Daniel, you're a hero. Word of Daniel's act of kindness spread quickly through their close-knit community. Neighbors began to gather outside Daniel and Lisa's apartment, eager to congratulate the boy who had made them all proud. Mr. Jenkins from the corner store arrived with a celebratory cake, while the Patel family from across the street brought colorful balloons. Even the grumpy old Mr. Simmons from the first floor showed up, a rare smile breaking through his weathered features. The small apartment soon filled with laughter and chatter as neighbors squeezed in, patting Daniel on the back and showering him with praise for his honesty. Overwhelmed by the unexpected attention, Daniel stayed close to his mother's side as the impromptu celebration unfolded around him. Finding a quiet corner in the small living room, he sank into his favorite worn armchair, the place where he often retreated for contemplation. As he watched the joyful chaos around him, the scene felt almost surreal, like something out of a dream. Daniel's thoughts drifted back to the morning he had discovered Mr. Carter's wallet. He could vividly recall the sensation of its weight in his hands and the fleeting temptation that arose when he noticed the stack of cash inside. However, that temptation had dissipated as quickly as it had appeared. Returning the wallet felt as effortless and instinctive as taking a breath. Now, enveloped by the warmth and admiration of his community, Daniel found himself wrestling with the complex blend of emotions. Although he was undeniably happy, he was also somewhat overwhelmed. People were calling him a hero, but he struggled to see himself in that light. To him, he had merely acted on the values his mother had instilled in him, values of honesty and integrity. As he observed his mother navigating the crowd, her eyes shimmering with pride, Daniel felt a new and unfamiliar sensation. Responsibility. The way people were looking at him had shifted, and there was an unspoken expectation of greatness now resting on his shoulders. The scholarship Mr. Carter had offered was undeniably significant, a gateway to a brighter future, yet it also seemed to carry an enormous weight of pressure. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Daniel took a deep breath, attempting to calm the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. He understood that despite the accolades and the scholarship, he was still the same Daniel, a kid who simply tried to do what was right. The external changes in recognition didn't alter his core identity. Nevertheless, and gnawing anxiety lingered. What if he fell short of everyone's expectations? What if he failed to live up to the newfound admiration? Sensing her son's inner turmoil, Lisa made her way over to Daniel. She knelt beside him, her presence both comforting and grounding. Gently placing her hand on his arm, she asked in a soft, concerned voice, "You okay, baby?" Daniel nodded, managing a small, reassuring smile. "Yeah, Mom, just thinking." Lisa's hand tightened around his arm in a gesture of support. "Remember, Daniel, you don't have to be perfect, just keep being you. That's more than enough." Her words enveloped Daniel like a warm blanket, easing some of his anxieties. He nodded, feeling a bit of his tension lift. While he might not have all the answers just yet, he was confident he would navigate his path one step at a time. In the days following the celebration, Mr. Carter found himself profoundly touched by Daniel's act of kindness. The image of the young boy's modesty and unwavering integrity lingered in his mind as he sat in his expansive office surrounded by symbols of his success. Mr. Carter felt compelled to do more than simply offer a scholarship. With a renewed sense of purpose, he convened his Team of lawyers and financial advisors, I want to establish a scholarship fund, he declared with resolve, not only for Daniel but for other children like him who demonstrate exceptional character. Over the next several weeks, Mr. Carr devoted himself to bringing his vision to fruition. He meticulously reviewed documents, made an unending series of phone calls, and conducted numerous meetings. The scholarship fund began to materialize, designed to recognize not just academic accomplishments but also acts of kindness, integrity, and community service. But Mr. Carter's commitment didn't end there. As he delved deeper into the realities of Daniel's neighborhood, he realized that a scholarship alone would not suffice. These children required more immediate support and opportunities to truly thrive. One sunny afternoon, as Mr. Carter gathered his team for a meeting, he articulated a vision that had been growing in his mind. We need to build a community center, he said with conviction. I'm talking about a space where kids can go after school, somewhere they can not only learn but also play and grow. His words carried a sense of purpose, and the IDE quickly began to take root. Mr. Carter's vision was clear and ambitious. He imagined a bright, welcoming facility that would include a library filled with books, a computer lab equipped with the latest technology, and sports facilities that would cater to the diverse interests of the youth. The goal was not just to create a physical space but to establish a beacon of hope in the neighborhood, a place dedicated to nurturing the potential he saw in Daniel and countless other children like him. As the project began to take shape, Mr. Carter experienced a profound sense of excitement and fulfillment that had been absent from his life for many years. He made frequent visits to Daniel's neighborhood, engaging with residents and local leaders to ensure that the community center would address the real needs of the area. Each interaction, each conversation added depth to the project, transforming it from a simple reward for one boy's honesty into a far-reaching initiative that promised to impact the lives of many. The day of the groundbreaking ceremony arrived, bringing with it a wave of enthusiasm and hope that swept through Daniel's neighborhood. The sun blazed in the sky, casting a golden glow over the event as if the weather itself was celebrating this significant milestone. Daniel stood nervously beside his mother, adjusting the collar of his new shirt and feeling a mixture of disbelief and excitement. His mother squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with pride and emotion. Mr. Carter arrived at the scene, dressed elegantly in a suit but with his sleeves rolled up, ready to get his hands dirty. He greeted Daniel and his mother warmly before turning to shake hands with the community leaders and residents who had gathered for the occasion. As the crowd fell silent in anticipation, Mr. Carter stepped up to the microphone, his presence commanding attention. Today, Mr. Carter began, his voice resonating with clarity and purpose. We are not merely breaking ground on a building, we are laying the foundation for a brighter future. He went on to elaborate on the center's mission, emphasizing its role in fostering kindness, community spirit, and opportunity. With a warm smile, he turned to Daniel, and who better to name the center after, he said, than the young man whose act of honesty inspired this entire project. The crowd's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic as Mr. Carter unveiled a sign that read the Daniel Thompson Community Center. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise and he felt a flush of warmth spread across his face, a blend of embarrassment and pride. As the ceremony continued, local leaders took turns sharing their thoughts on the center's potential impact. Daniel listened intently, his heart swelled in with each expression of hope and gratitude. The moment of symbolic groundbreaking approached. Mr. Carter handed Daniel a small shiny shovel, his gesture imbued with significance. Would you do the honors, he asked with hands that trembled slightly. Daniel accepted the shovel. He glanced out at the crowd, his neighbors, teachers, and even some of his classmates were present. Cameras flashed as he pressed the shovel into the soft earth and turned over the first scoop of dirt. The crowd erupted in cheers and Daniel's smile broadened as he stood there holding the shovel. He realized that his simple act of returning a lost wallet had set off a chain of events that would profoundly transform his community. As the applause gradually ebbed, Mr. Carter turned to Daniel with a warm, encouraging smile that spoke volumes. Daniel, would you like to say a few words, he asked, extending his hand towards the microphone. Daniel's heart skipped a beat, his eyes widening in surprise. He had never imagined himself standing before such a large crowd, let alone giving a speech. A wave of nervousness swept over him, causing his palms to grow sweaty. Desperately seeking comfort, he glanced at his mother, who met his gaze with an encouraging nod. Her eyes were filled with a deep, unwavering pride and an abundance of love that seemed to infuse him with a newfound courage. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Daniel approached the microphone, his small frame suddenly feeling vulnerable under the spotlight. The cacophony of voices and laughter quieted to an expectant hush as all eyes focused on the young boy who had unwittingly ignited this remarkable journey. For a fleeting, overwhelming moment, Daniel felt paralyzed, his mind racing as he faced the sea of unfamiliar faces. But amidst the swirling apprehension, he recalled the essence of Why he was there, his simple yet profound act of returning a lost wallet, and the values his mother had instilled in him. With the realization of the significance of his actions, the words began to flow more freely. "Hi everyone," Daniel began, his voice trembling slightly at first but gradually gaining strength with each word. "I'm not used to speaking in front of so many people, but I want to thank all of you for being here today." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, trying to anchor his thoughts. "When I found Mr. Carter's wallet that day, I didn't think I was doing anything special. I just knew it was the right thing to do. My mom always taught me that even small acts of kindness can make a big difference." The sincerity in his voice resonated with the audience, and Daniel could see nods of agreement and encouraging smiles all around. "I never imagined that returning a wallet would lead to all of this," he continued, gesturing toward the bustling construction site that was now a symbol of community and transformation. "It just goes to show that doing the right thing, no matter how small it might seem, can have a huge impact." His voice grew steadier and more confident as he spoke from the heart. "This community center is going to help so many people, and I'm deeply honored that it will bear my name, but honestly it belongs to all of us, as it's a reminder that we each have the power to make our community better, one small act at a time." Daniel's eyes met his mother's once more, and he saw tears of joy shimmering in her eyes, reflecting the overwhelming pride and love she felt for him. "I want to thank my mom for always teaching me to do the right thing, and I want to thank Mr. Carter for his incredible generosity, but most of all I want to thank everyone here for your support and for believing in the power of kindness." His voice choked up slightly with emotion, but he managed to finish with heartfelt gratitude as the applause surged again in response to Daniel's touching words. Mr. Carter approached him, his expression a mixture of pride and warmth. He gave Daniel a supportive pat on the back, and Daniel's mother rushed forward, enveloping him in a tight, loving hug that seemed to erase all traces of nervousness and replace them with a profound sense of accomplishment and belonging. Just as the applause began to subside, Mr. Carter stepped forward, his face radiating a deep sense of pride and purpose. He placed a gentle, reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder and addressed the audience with a voice filled with warmth and conviction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Carter began, his voice carrying a tone of gravitas and enthusiasm, "I have one more announcement to make today. In honor of Daniel's extraordinary act of integrity, I am establishing a scholarship fund in his name." The words hung in the air, and a ripple of excitement and anticipation flowed through the crowd. Daniel's eyes widened in astonishment, and his mother's gasp of surprise was audible beside him. Mr. Carter continued, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "The Daniel Thompson Integrity Scholarship will provide educational opportunities to students who demonstrate the same kind of honesty and moral courage that Daniel has exemplified. Each year we will select deserving students who have gone above and beyond in their commitment to doing what is right, no matter the circumstances." He paused, allowing the magnitude of the announcement to settle over the audience. "This scholarship will cover full tuition for college or vocational training, ensuring that these exceptional young individuals have the chance to further their education and emerge as leaders in our community." Daniel stood there, overwhelmed by the gravity of Mr. Carter's words. A profound mixture of pride, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility washed over him. His mother squeezed his hand, tears of joy streaming down her face, her silence supported testament to the journey they had undertaken together. Mr. Carter continued to detail the scholarship, his words underscoring the transformative power of Daniel's simple yet profound act of kindness. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. We will be collaborating closely with local schools to identify students who demonstrate exceptional integrity in their daily lives. This scholarship will be accessible to students from all walks of life, with particular emphasis on those who might not otherwise have the resources to pursue higher education. He turned towards Daniel, his eyes sparkling with admiration. "Daniel, your single act of honesty has set in motion a ripple effect that will impact countless lives for years to come. This scholarship fund will ensure that your legacy of integrity continues to inspire and support future generations long into the future." The audience erupted into applause once again, many of them wiping tears from their eyes. Daniel stood there, feeling overwhelmed by the profound impact his seemingly simple act had generated. He gazed up at Mr. Carter, gratitude evident in his eyes, but found himself at a loss for words to fully convey his emotions. The following Monday, Daniel returned to school, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and an apprehension. As he walked through the hallways, he noticed students whispering and exchanging smiles with him. Some classmates even stopped to pat him on the back, offering congratulations for his honesty. When the bell rang for the first period, rather than proceeding to their usual classes, all the students were directed to the school auditorium. Furious and slightly nervous, Daniel followed the crowd, wondering what was happening. As he entered the auditorium, he was greeted with a wave of thunderous applause. The entire school Students, teachers and staff had gathered for a special assembly in his honor. Daniel's cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and pride as he realized the entire event was a tribute to him. The principal, standing at the podium with a warm and proud smile, addressed the assembly. Today we gathered to celebrate one of our own, she began. Daniel Thompson has exemplified what it truly means to possess integrity. As Daniel sat in the front row, his hands nervously fidgeting in his lap, Mrs. Rodriguez, his history teacher, recounted the story of how he had found and returned Mr. Carter's lost wallet. His classmates listened attentively, many nodding in agreement. Mrs. Rodriguez continued, Daniel's actions remind us all that even the smallest acts of honesty can make a significant impact. He has brought honor, not just to himself but to our entire school community. With a warm gesture, Mrs. Rodriguez called Daniel to the stage. With unsteady legs, he made his way up the steps. She presented him with a beautifully framed certificate of recognition. This certificate honors Daniel Thompson for his outstanding display of integrity and honesty. She read aloud. The auditorium erupted in cheers and applause. Once more standing there holding the certificate, Daniel was overwhelmed by a mix of pride and humility. He knew he had simply acted according to his principles, but the recognition was deeply moving. As the weeks turned into months, Daniel adjusted to his newfound role in the community. The initial shock of sudden fame gradually faded, replaced by a quiet determination to live up to the high expectations that had been placed upon him at school. Daniel continued to excel academically. His teachers noted a new spark of confidence in him, not born from arrogance but from a deeper understanding of his potential. He began participating more actively in class discussions, eager to share his insights and ideas. One day during lunch break, Daniel overheard some classmates discussing a local animal shelter in need of volunteers. Without hesitation, he approached them to offer his assistance. The following Saturday, Daniel found himself at the shelter cleaning cages and walking dogs. The joy he experienced in helping these animals was unparalleled. This initial foray into community service ignited a passion within him. He began seeking out additional opportunities to give back, joining the school's environmental club and participating in neighborhood cleanup drives on weekends. He also volunteered at the community center that now bore his name, assisting younger kids with their homework. Daniel's mother observed her son's growth with immense pride and touch of amazement. She had always known he was special, but witnessing him evolve into a community leader at such a young age filled her heart with joy. As Daniel became increasingly involved in various projects, he began to inspire others. His dedication encouraged his classmates to join him in his volunteer efforts, creating a ripple effect that spread throughout the school and the neighborhood. Despite his demanding schedule, Daniel never lost sight of the core values that initially motivated him to return Mr. Carter's wallet. His humility remained steadfast. He was always quick to deflect praise and steer conversations toward the causes he was passionate about. One evening, while sharing dinner with his mother, she inquired about how he was coping with the significant changes in his life. Daniel paused for a moment, reflecting on the journey he had been on before responding thoughtfully, "You know, Mom, at first I was really scared. I had doubts about whether I could live up to everyone's expectations, but then it hit me that I'm just being myself. I'm following the principles you instilled in me to be kind and to help others. It feels both fulfilling and natural." As the months went by, Mr. Carter found himself increasingly drawn to the community center he had helped establish. What had initially started as a gesture of thanks towards Daniel had evolved into a genuine and heartfelt commitment to improving the lives of young people. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Mr. Carter would leave his office early, changing out of his formal suit and tie into more casual attire. Before heading to the center, the children's faces would light up with excitement whenever he arrived. As he was always ready with a kind word or a helping hand, Mr. Carter became deeply involved in mentoring the youth at the center. He organized and led workshops on financial literacy, career planning, and entrepreneurship. His eyes would sparkle with enthusiasm as he imparted his knowledge and experience to the eager young minds gathered before him. Yet it was his relationship with Daniel that truly flourished. In Daniel, Mr. Carter saw a reflection of his younger self, ambitious, compassionate, and brimming with potential. He took Daniel under his wing, offering guidance not only in academics but in navigating life's broader lessons. Their connection deepened with each passing week. They would often spend time together after the center's activities, discussing Daniel's dreams and aspirations. Mr. Carter listened with genuine interest, providing advice and encouragement for Daniel. Mr. Carter became more than just a mentor. He filled a void he hadn't fully recognized. While Daniel's mother had always been his steadfast support, having a father figure like Mr. Carter provided an additional layer of guidance and inspiration. One Saturday afternoon, as they were tidying up after a community event at the center, Mr. Carter placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. With a voice full of warmth and pride, he said, "You know, Daniel, I'm proud of you, not just for returning my wallet that day but for everything you've accomplished since then. You're truly a remarkable young man Daniel felt a lump form in his throat, his emotions welling up as he heard those heartfelt words. Looking up at Mr. Carter, his eyes shone with gratitude and admiration. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," he said softly, for everything as the weeks turned into months. The bond between Daniel and Mr. Carter grew even stronger. They spent more time together working on various projects at the community center. Mr. Carter saw on Daniel a young man with immense potential, while Daniel saw Mr. Carter as both a mentor and a father figure. On a sunny Saturday morning, as they were busy organizing a neighborhood cleanup event, Daniel watched in admiration as Mr. Carter effortlessly coordinated volunteers and delegated tasks. "Daniel," Mr. Carter called out, "why don't you take charge of the group cleaning up the part?" Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? Are you sure?" he asked, his voice tinged with nervousness. Mr. Carter smiled warmly. "I'm sure you've got what it takes, son. Just remember to listen to your team and lead by example." Taking a deep breath, Daniel nodded and gathered his group. Initially feeling anxious, he gradually began to feel a newfound sense of confidence as he assigned tasks and worked alongside his peers, realizing his capacity for leadership and growth. Mr. Carter observed from a distance, his heart swelling with a profound sense of pride as he watched the scene unfold before him. He saw Daniel, whose natural charisma and genuine enthusiasm breathed life into the team. Daniel's words of encouragement, his heartfelt praise for his teammates' efforts, and his inventive solutions to the minor problems that arose were a testament to his growing leadership skills. Each moment reminded Mr. Carter of his early days in business, days filled with hope, determination, and the desire to make a difference. As he watched Daniel in action, Mr. Carter was flooded with a deep nostalgia for those formative years, and it struck him how far he had come since then. Yet it was this very experience with Daniel that rekindled something within him that had been missing for so long. Despite his achievements and the accolades he had received throughout his career, he had always felt a void, a yearning for something more meaningful. Now witness Daniel's growth and being the part of his journey provided Mr. Carter with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment that he hadn't felt in years. As the day wound down, Mr. Carter and Daniel took a moment to rest, sitting together on a weathered bench and savoring the refreshing lemonade they had earned. The simple pleasure of that moment, combined with the satisfaction of their hard work, highlighted the depth of their shared experience. With a warm smile, Mr. Carter turned to Daniel and said, "You did a fantastic job today, Daniel. You have a natural gift for leadership." Daniel's face lit up with an expression of pride and gratitude. "Thanks, Mr. Carter. I've learned from the best," he replied. Mr. Carter's laughter was soft yet filled with a deep, resonant warmth. "You know, Daniel, while I might be teaching you about leadership and responsibility, you're teaching me something incredibly valuable in return." Daniel's eyes widened with curiosity, eager to understand the deeper meaning behind Mr. Carter's words. "What's that?" he asked with a gentle, almost wistful tone. Mr. Carter responded, "You're reminding me of the joy of truly making a difference in the business world. It's all too easy to become absorbed in numbers and success metrics, losing sight of the things that matter most. But seeing you grow and observing the positive changes we're making in the community has given me a renewed perspective on life, a reminder of why we do what we do." As the months rolled by, the impact of Daniel's heartfelt efforts at the newly established community center began to unfold in ways that touched the very soul of the neighborhood. The one struggling area which had been marked by neglect and despair was slowly but surely transforming into a beacon of hope and revitalization, all ignited by a single act of kindness. The community center, now proudly named Daniel's Place, emerged as a vibrant hub of activity, bustling with the energy of renewed possibilities. Children who had previously wandered the streets aimlessly after school now had a safe, welcoming place to study, play, and develop new skills. The center offered an array of programs, tutoring, art classes, and basic computer skills workshops that breathed new life into the community and provided adults with the tools they needed to improve their job prospects. Mrs. Thompson, Daniel's mother, observed these changes with a profound sense of amazement during her daily walks to work. The streets, once filled with litter and a palpable sense of neglect, now sparkled with a newfound vibrancy. Residents took pride in their surroundings, actively participating in the upkeep of their neighborhood. She often saw neighbors who once seemed resigned to the state of their community now enthusiastically picking up trash and tending to small garden patches that had sprung up along the sidewalks. Local businesses too began to thrive. The increased foot traffic around the community center had breathed new life into nearby shops, and Mr. Johnson, the corner store owner, found himself hiring extra staff to keep up with the burgeoning demand. The scholarship fund established in Daniel's name was already making a profound impact on individual lives. Sarah, a bright and hopeful girl from Daniel's school, had received the first scholarship her parents, who had always struggled to make ends meet, now clung to. The hope that their daughter could pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. This hope, once a distant dream, now seemed within reach. Even the local park, once neglected and shunned, had been revitalized the sounds of children's laughter, and the sight of families enjoying picnics filled the air. A testament to the transformation that had taken place, the cleanup effort spearheaded by Daniel and Mr. Carter had sparked a broader sense of community ownership as news of the positive changes spread. An outpouring of support followed. A local tech company generously donated computers to the community center, and a group of retired teachers volunteered their time to assist with the tutoring program. This collective effort, born from a single act of kindness, had ignited a wave of positive change that touched every corner of the neighborhood, illustrating the profound impact of compassion and commitment on a community's spirit. Daniel, now navigating the complexities of early adolescence, observed the remarkable changes in his life with a blend of awe and humility. The transformation he had witnessed in his community and himself since that fateful decision to return a lost wallet was beyond anything he could have imagined. Each time he walked through the bustling halls of the community center, his heart swelled with pride, helping younger children with their homework or assisting with various programs. Daniel was immersed in the fruits of his small yet significant act of kindness. This sense of pride was accompanied by a deep-seated responsibility, a recognition that his actions had sparked a ripple effect that extended far beyond his initial gesture. As Daniel approached his final year of high school, he found himself on the brink of a promising future. The once reserved boy who had inadvertently stumbled upon a wallet had evolved into a confident young man admired by his peers and cherished by his community. The transformation was not just in his demeanor but in the way he engaged with those around him. Each day after school, Daniel devoted time to the community center, either tutoring younger kids or contributing to various programs that had flourished over the years. This place, once a backdrop to his act of returning a lost wallet, had become a cornerstone of his daily life, and it was here that Daniel often contemplated his future. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 6 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. One afternoon, while seated in the center's library amidst shelves of books and educational materials, Daniel's gaze fell upon a stack of glossy college brochures. His heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and nervousness. What had always seemed like a distant aspiration was now tantalizingly close, thanks to the scholarship fund that bore his name, a testament to the community's support and belief in his potential. Mrs. Thompson, having noticed the contemplative expression on her son's face as she entered the library, approached him with a gentle, reassuring presence. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" she inquired, placing a tender hand on his shoulder. Daniel looked up at his mother, his eyes alight with hope and determination. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about my future. I want to study social work in college. I want to learn how to make an even bigger impact on communities like ours." Mrs. Thompson's eyes shimmered with tears of pride and emotion. She enveloped Daniel in a heartfelt embrace, her voice choked with sentiment. "Oh, Daniel," she said softly, "you've already accomplished so much, and I am confident that you will achieve even greater things." Later that week, during one of their regular mentoring sessions, Daniel shared his aspirations with Mr. Carter, his longtime mentor and a pillar of the community. Mr. Carter listened attentively, his face breaking into a proud and encouraging smile. "Daniel," Mr. Carter said, leaning forward with earnestness, "I've watched you grow into an exceptional young man. Your commitment to this community is truly inspiring. No matter which path you choose, I have no doubt you'll make a significant impact." Bolstered by the unwavering support from his mother and Mr. Carter, Daniel dedicated himself wholeheartedly to his college applications. He spent countless hours meticulously crafting essays that recounted his experiences and articulated his dreams for the future. Each word he penned was imbued with gratitude for the opportunities he had been afforded and a steadfast resolve to create similar opportunities for others. As Daniel worked tirelessly toward his goals, he frequently reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. The vibrant, bustling atmosphere of the community center served as a constant reminder of the profound impact that a single act of kindness could have. He felt a deep sense of reassurance, knowing that whatever challenges might arise, he had the unyielding support of his family, his mentor, and the entire community behind him. As the sun began its gentle descent on a balmy summer evening, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Daniel, his mother, and Mr. Carter gathered around a quaint rustic table in the heart of the Thompson modest kitchen. The aroma of Mrs. Thompson's renowned pot roast permeated the room, a savory symphony that blended harmoniously with the freshly baked bread's comforting scent. The kitchen was alive with a warm, homey atmosphere, a stark contrast to the world outside. Daniel's gaze softened as he looked at the two people who had been his steadfast supporters. His mother, with eyes that sparkled with unspoken pride, sat across from him, her presence radiating warmth and encouragement. Next to her, Mr. Carter was dressed casually, a welcome departure from his usual business suits. His relaxed demeanor and easy smile spoke volumes about the deep sense of contentment and camaraderie in the room. As they began to serve themselves, the clatter of utensils and the murmur of satisfaction filled the air. A Comfortable silence settled over the gathering, a testament to the ease and familiarity that had grown among them. It was Mr. Carter who finally broke the silence, his voice imbued with a heartfelt sincerity. He began, his eyes sweeping across the table. I never imagined that losing my wallet would lead to all of this. Mrs. Thompson looked at Daniel with a tender smile, her hand reaching across the table to give her son's hand a reassuring squeeze. Daniel's always had a kind heart, she said, her voice tinged with emotion, but that day when he decided to return your wallet, it was a pivotal moment. It set off a chain of events that changed everything for us. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling a lump in his throat as he absorbed their words. I was just doing what I thought was right, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I never expected it to lead to such a transformation. Mr. Carter leaned forward, his expression serious yet filled with warmth. That's exactly what made it so extraordinary, Daniel. You acted not for recognition or reward, but because you believed it was the right thing to do. Your selflessness is what has made all the difference. As the meal continued, the conversation flowed effortlessly from one topic to another. They reminisced a few years, reflecting on the community center's grand opening, Daniel's growth as both a student and a leader, and the positive changes that had taken root in their neighborhood. Daniel looked around the table, his heart swelling with gratitude and appreciation. He saw the proud, loving smile on his mother's face, the same one she always wore whenever she looked at him, and he saw the fatherly affection in Mr. Carter's eyes, a bond that had deepened with time and shared experiences. Daniel said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion, I used to think that returning the wallet was just a small gesture, but now I realize how that one act of kindness brought us all together and changed our lives in ways I never could have imagined. Mrs. Thompson dabbed at a tear that had escaped down her cheek, her eyes reflecting both joy and awe. It's incredible how a single act of kindness can create such far-reaching ripples, she said softly, her voice quivering with the weight of the moment. Mr. Carter nodded thoughtfully, his gaze steady. And this is just the beginning, Daniel. Your journey is far from over. There's so much more ahead. Daniel's smile broadened, a sense of warmth and purpose enveloping him. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment and readiness for whatever lay ahead. He knew that the future held many possibilities, and with the support of those who cared for him, he was prepared to embrace whatever came next with hope and determination. As we wrap up today's journey through our stories and reflections, we hope you found something that resonates deeply with you. From Daniel's honest act of returning a lost wallet to the transformative power of community and personal integrity, each story is a reminder of the values we cherish and the changes. This is the end of this wonderful story. I hope you liked it, and you were imbued with this atmosphere. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as it promotes my video. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye everyone.